TorahCafe.com.
In the past month, particularly in this country, but then spilling out beyond as well, much of the conversation that has been taking place, whether it is on synagogue pulpits, whether it is in actual fact on Friday night chicken soup, media, and wherever else besides, has been all about the Pew survey on American Jewry. And if you will have heard about it, it makes for dire reading, where the basic suggestion is that the 21st century has a rather nervous, predictable future. The memory is fading, the community outside Israel is withering away, the barriers are coming down and Jews are scrambling over, taboos against mixed marriages are wilting, Jewish people are breeding less and less and are being condemned less as outsiders. Historian Jacob Talman called the Jews a community of fate. And the philosopher Martin Buber referred to us as a people with a memory. And the saddest part of all is that the demographic debate is no longer between optimists and pessimists, but between the more pessimistic and the less pessimistic. And invariably, the blame game starts, usually exercised, I suggest, with those who are more concerned about exonerating their individual conscience rather than doing anything about the bigger problem. I mean, don't we all look to shift responsibility, to blame our shortcomings on everything but our own selves? Kids blame their parents. Spouses blame each other. We blame our jobs, our time constraints, the stresses, the anxieties of the rat race. Every successive government blames its problems on the shortfalls of the previous government. In fact, already from the very beginning of time, we were playing that blame game. What did Adam reply to God when he challenged him about eating from the tree? Eve made me do it. She, in turn, blamed the snake. It all adds up to one thing: apathy. Not that you are not bothered about what's going on, but that you genuinely believe that you can't. Full stop. I can't do it. Blame my mother, blame my husband, blame my kids, blame whoever you want, but the bottom line is I can't. Kind of reminds me of the story of these two young brothers who were real troublemakers, and the parents were perplexed, sending them around from one Jewish school to another. No school was able to hold them in. She had no choice, so she had to enroll them in a very strict Catholic school. And the older brother is sitting in the dean's office while the younger one is waiting down the hall, and the dean, a big burly priest, is sitting there behind his desk, and he says, "Young man, where is God?" And the boy doesn't say a word. He says, "Young man, I asked you a question. Where is God?" And again, the boy shifts uneasily in his seat, but not a word. So this big burly priest comes menacingly from around the side of his desk, towering over this young innocent child, and he says, "I'm going to ask you one more time, where is God?" At which point the boy jumps out of his seat, runs out of the office, right down the hall, runs bang smack into his younger brother, who says, What is it?" He says, "We got to get out of here, man. They lost God and they're blaming us." The Pew survey highlights a 58% intermarriage rate. And I grant you, that's a tragedy. And thus there will be those wringing their hands in despair, declaring the horse has already bolted, there's no point any longer trying to shut the stable door. There's little or nothing more that we can do. But here's a simple question. What about the other 42%? What's the secret that has kept the other 42% in check? Why are we focusing so much on the negative, on the lamentable number of people that have drifted as the presumed guidepost for the future direction of American Jewry and from there by extension to the rest of the world? Why not concentrate on that 42% and figure out what keeps them engaged? What keeps them involved? What's anchoring them to their roots? And then take that out there to the other 58% in order to win however many of them back and implement whatever is working in order to bolster the numbers and stem the decline going forward. The philosopher Nietzsche famously said, "The world is beautiful, but has a disease called man." Chabad insists that the precise beauty of the world is made up of the many individuals, all who were made in the image of their Creator, and that the only difference between those who look to build and those who do despair lies simply in the way they view mankind. The ability to see beauty in others is the beginning of our moral sensibility. Chabad says that the world we truly desire is good. It can be one. It exists. It is real. It is possible. It is yours. So we don't panic in the face of surveys and statistics. Rather, we keep on building brick by brick, soul by soul, for a better, more meaningful, more illuminating tomorrow. You know, some 39 years ago, I had a second grade teacher who saw me fretting over a piece of work that I simply found difficult to do in class. It was a piece of maths. Today, in political terms, I would have been described as mathematically challenged. And I had the inability to complete it. And she screamed across the room, and I still remember it, Miss Spitzer, and she said, "Yitzchok, Schochet, there is no such thing as I can't." Now, to be sure, I've since come to learn that some great sages about 2,000 years before her coined a similar phrase, albeit in a much more positive context. Ein lecha davar ha'emed b'fnei haratzon, there is nothing, but nothing that can stand in the way of true will. A point the Rabbi emphasized and reiterated time and again to countless people, myself included, in letters, meetings, and so forth. In fact, it's a fundamental principle not just of Judaism, but indeed of life. Think about this. When summoned at the burning bush to become the bona fide leader of the Jewish people, 3 times Moses replies to God, "I can't." Vayicharaf Hashem b'Moshe, and God rages against Moses. If I present you with a challenge, then clearly you can. And God doesn't overimpose upon his creation. If a task presents itself to you, then that is your burning bush moment, when God is saying to you, here is an opportunity for you to celebrate, like never before, your own power, your own ability to get yourself to do whatever is necessary. Because life is all about advancement. It's about progress. It's about engaging with your Chabad house and with your shliach and never standing still. When we stagnate, then we degenerate. The moment someone makes a conscious decision to say, "I can't," the moment someone makes a conscious decision not to progress, they will invariably regress. It may not be immediate, it may not be readily discernible, but it is inevitable. God is the wind beneath the wings of your neshama, of your souls, enabling us to climb even higher. Because when they say the sky's the limit, they're only talking about our physical ability. But when it comes to the spiritual potential, when it comes to what we can accomplish, then we can soar to infinity and beyond. The only obstacle, the only thing that can impede our ability to move forward, to achieve, to accomplish, the only barrier that hinders the divine evolutionary process of upward spiral is that little voice that niggles inside you and dares to say, "I can't." The famous biblical Joseph was trapped in the depths of Egyptian hell. Life seemed all but over. Imagine if he would have said, "I can't." But in the end, he emerges as viceroy of Egypt. Countless Jewish heroes endured the ineffable treachery of the camps in the Holocaust or gulags in the former Soviet Union. The future seems so out of reach. Imagine if they would have said, "I can't." Today they live amongst us. Their children live amongst us. The Rebbes, the founding fathers of Chabad, were oppressed, incarcerated, threatened with death. Imagine if they would have said, "I can't," if they would have despaired. But today, you are sitting here as living proof of the miracle that is Chabad. And you and me, well, thank God we live in free societies, but nonetheless, we might get oppressed by the limitations of our own imaginations, or the dictates of a society that says you can't. And then the onus is on us to go and search for the hero inside ourselves and continue to nurture ourselves at every interval in life, constantly progressing upwards, always moving forward, aiming ever higher, determining where more and what more you can do. Tonight you're going to experience what can only be described as the epicenter of the Jewish world. The shluchim, and you, the lay leaders, the movers and shakers of the world the way God always intended for it to be. And what you will witness is the clearest, most forceful testament to what happens when you say, I can. Do you ever wonder why God made us such that we have to first crawl before we can walk? Why not just simply make man with the wherewithal and ability to walk from the word go? You know, you just hop off the birthing table, take your mother's hand, walk out of the labor ward in hospital and go home. Do you remember when you first started to walk? Do you remember how many times you may have fallen? And there would have been the voice of your mother or your father calling to you, challenging you, telling you, come on, you can do it. So maybe God wants us to undergo that experience at the earliest possible stage of our life, so that that same voice echoes and reverberates within our souls all through life. At whatever juncture when we hit life's speed bumps, whether in relationships, whether at work, whether in life, whether in our Jewish world, and maybe we fall, and maybe apathy starts to creep in. But that same voice is there, encouraging us, cajoling us to pick ourselves back up and walk again. It was only a few short months ago when my father, Hareini Kaparas Mishkova, a blessed memory, his soul left this world. He was someone who impacted numerous shluchim and Chabad houses across the globe through his teachings, through his lectures, through his writings. He was a mentor to many, but to me, he was my father. And as a kid growing up, he would always sit on my bed at night and tell me the story of the particular Torah portion of that week, often with wonderful drama and animation. And I vividly recall the way he would depict the story of Abraham, our forefather, about his adventures, about everything he would encounter. And I remember I would try and lie there and get a picture of what does Abraham look like. And I would imagine him with a big white yarmulke and a long white beard. And I remember my father telling me that Abraham was not just the first Jew, but he was, in fact, the first Lubavitcher, the first Shliach. And I may not have grasped the implication of what he was saying at that time, but today, as I am that little bit older and hopefully that little bit wiser, I actually understand what he was saying. Avraham was 75 when God first challenged him to move from his land, from his birthplace, from his father's home, to the land which I will show you. There are three things which mold the character of an individual. Number one, your father's home. In other words, your characteristics, your gene pool, what you inherit from your mother or father. Your birthplace, by definition, your own innate qualities, the quirks and the idiosyncrasies that make up your personality. And your land, namely the society in which you live, the culture and the traditions to which you are exposed and which sometimes superimposes on you. God tells him to leave all that, and in so doing conveys a compelling message. Abraham, and by extension you and me, are being instructed by God that at no point in your life do you have an excuse to blame your upbringing or your character or your genetic makeup or your environment. At no point do you have to capitulate and tell yourself, this is who I am, this is all that I can be. Says God, no, you can leave all that. You can move beyond all that. You can transcend all of that. Because for as long as you are here, you clearly still have purpose to serve. Otherwise, dare I say it, frankly, you would no longer be here. And for as long as you have a purpose to serve, you have to seek and you have to explore and you have to determine where else and where more you can make your difference. At no point until the song is over do you have a right to stop playing your pivotal role in the orchestra of life. So long as the conductor above continues to beckon to you, you have to keep blowing your trumpet. I'm too old. I'm too tired. I'm too busy. I can't. Abraham was 99 years old, nursing a surgery from his circumcision, when 3 strangers walked past his Chabad house. Vayoratz lekrosam, he ran, not walked, ran out towards them. It didn't matter what it said on his passport or on his medical records. If he knew that he could do it, he did it. And in so doing, he demonstrates to us that granted maybe there are certain obvious limitations in life, where we have to be reasonable and we have to be practical, but there may well be many more fabricated limitations as well, engendered by apathy, by indifference, or maybe again just the fear of the unknown. So the challenge is to get even more passionate about life. The challenge is to walk away from this experience here today and the banquet tonight and get more excited about your role therein, to determine where else and how else you can impact your slice of the world. You find it sometimes difficult, I say to you, it's not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It's because we don't dare that they are difficult. You're uncertain about that extra undertaking. I say to you, every shot you don't take is a guaranteed miss. You find reaching beyond your comfort zone a little bit too risky. I say if you don't risk anything, you risk even more. And if you question whether there really is any point, I say to you, and this really sums up in essence the Rebbe's challenge to all of us, when you are more afraid of missing the opportunities that God has in store for you than you are of making mistakes, that's when you'll start reaching for the impossible. That was the uniqueness of Abraham. God said, Lech lecha, go, keep moving, don't be afraid of change. Ela aretz asher areka, to a land which I will show you, don't be afraid of the unknown. Confront each challenge as it presents itself. Keep climbing higher, because the greatest tragedy in life is not aiming too high and missing, it's aiming too low and reaching. Life is all about getting excited when opportunity presents itself. It means seizing the minute, live in the present, launch yourself on every wave, find your eternity in every moment. You know, there was this Jewish father who had 2 children. One was exceptionally positive. Everything in life was great. Even the bleakest moments were really bright. And the other was the eternal pessimist. Wherever he looked, he saw disaster. He saw catastrophe even in the opportunity. And the father thinks to himself, I've got to change this trend. I've got to inculcate my children with different attitudes. And so when the kids are out in school, he goes into the pessimistic, the negative child's room, and he fills it up with every imaginable toy, thinking to himself that surely when my son comes home, this will finally put a smile on his face. And then he walks into the other kid's room, the positive son, the one who's always happy, and thinks to himself, I've got to bring him a little bit down to earth. And so, forgive me, he fills his room with a huge pile of horse manure. And then he waits. And about an hour later, the kids come home from school, and he goes outside the negative son's room, and he listens, and he hears his kid crying. And he goes inside, and he says, son, what's wrong? All these toys. And he says, Dad, the batteries are going to die. The toys are going to break. I have to read all the instruction manuals. My friends are going to be jealous. It's just not worth it. And the father walks out shrugging his shoulders in despair. And then he walks past the happy, the positive son's room. And he hears the kids screaming and jumping for joy. And he opens the door, and the kid is standing on the top of the big pile and he's jumping with joy. And the father looks to him and says, son, it's just horse manure. And the son says, Dad, I know there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. When it comes to Chabad, it doesn't matter how challenging or messy the situation might seem. The shliach is there, a smile on his face, a fire in his heart, and a shovel in his hand, looking to dig out the souls, the holiness, the pristine beauty within. And you, my friends, all dear lay leaders, you are right there with him, whether supplying him with the necessary digging tools or getting stuck right in next to him, side by side, partners every step of the way. And even if, along the way, your instinct might sometimes suggest to you that you can't, remember this. What you're going to become in life, that's not up to you. That's preordained from above. Whether you become it, that's down to you, and whether indeed you search for the greater hero inside yourself, waiting to be unleashed. So in conclusion, a natural question emerges for me now. As a mourner, in my year of mourning, am I allowed to attend the gala banquet in a short while? So I was engaged in discussion with a senior rabbi, judge, friend, and I asked the question, and he was like, Yitzchok, a dinner, you know, it's not right. And I considered the fact that he was, after all, not Chabad, and therefore could not appreciate the enormity of impact this banquet has. The fact that, and I say this not lightly, even as we all celebrate and dance down here, I am certain, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the angels and every Rebbe and every Chassid above is doing exactly the same. So I then thereafter asked a good friend, Chabad rabbi, and he was like, Yitzchok, of course you can attend. You can attend any banquet you want. You can dance any time you want. You have to only always be b'simcha. And I considered after the fact that it was Simchas Torah and he was answering me with a half-empty bottle of vodka in his hands. So I knew maybe I had to take that with a pinch of salt as well. So I take the compromise position. I will go to the banquet, but I will perhaps stand aside during the actual dancing. It is the answer I imagine my father would give me. But that moment will provide me with a rare opportunity to look into the faces of everyone else dancing. And I would urge you to do the same if you can. Just steal a brief moment and look into the face of your shliach and the several other thousands besides. If you've ever wondered what Abraham looks like, look at the face of your shliach tonight, along with that conviction and that determination. Look at that smile that defies the words "I can't," which you will never, ever hear uttered from his lips. And then look into your own soul and tell yourself that you too can strive to be all that you can be. You too can go and discover what God has in store for you. Go and search for that hero inside yourself. Let's not be wasting time determining the blame, the faults, despairing in the face of whatever negative surveys and hype is being peddled out there. That's futile energy. Our purpose, our mission, is about confronting the challenges and getting on with the business of building, brick by brick, soul by soul, for a better, more illuminating tomorrow. That's what Chabad does. That's what Chabad does so beautifully. That's what you all do. And that's what you all do so beautifully. And it is precisely that which will lead us straight from the dancing of tonight into the dancing at that ultimate banquet with Mashiach, which we will certainly merit speedily. Amen.